Father, why do we have to stand in a special place to read the sacred scriptures and proclaim the gospel?
Hello, I'm Father Vin. Thank you for joining me as we explore the wonders of the Mass. If you've been following along with us in this series, these last couple of episodes, we've been discovering the introductory rites. But now we're preparing to walk into the second part of the Mass, which is the liturgy of the Word, in which God speaks with us. And this is where He leads us into our journey of salvation. I'd like to start by showing you the amble, which is a place in which sacred scriptures are read and the gospel proclaimed. You may have heard people call this a pulpit or a lectern or a podium, but those descriptions are not quite accurate. A lectern is usually a stand for holding books or sheet music, and a pulpit or a podium is usually used for speeches or speakers, like the altar, which reveals Christ physically with His people in the Eucharist. In the Mass, the amble reveals Christ amidst His people in His Word. This makes it much more than just a book stand or a podium for speeches. In the Mass, the amble is a platform for where God speaks to us. And so the amble is not just an object, but a sacred space. There are three areas in which we turn our attention during the Mass. There is the chair, the altar, and the amble. We turn our attention to the chair where the priest sits, and that's where he proclaims the introductory and concluding rites. And for the liturgy of the Eucharist, on the altar we turn our attention. And for the liturgy of the Word, everybody focuses their attention on the ambo. The word ambo comes from the Greek, which means step or elevation. Spiritually speaking, Christ is elevated. He goes up the mountain. Where He stands, He opens up His mouth, and He preached the Sermon on the Mount. When the sacred scriptures are read in the Mass, God Himself speaks to His people, and Christ, present in His Word, proclaims the gospel. That means the amble should never be used for anything else besides reading the sacred scripture and proclaiming the gospel. This is why announcements, funerals, eulogies, and other guest speakers should not be using the amble. Instead, they would be done from another suitable place, generally the cantor's stand. Next time when you go to the Mass, during the liturgy of the Word, I invite you to turn your body and recognize and acknowledge the sacred space which is happening in that moment. And so ask God for the grace to be able to open up your ears and your hearts to hear whatever message God may be speaking to you. Thank you for joining us on this segment of Wonders of the Mass. And remember, when you lead the Mass, live the Mass.